In a stunning move that has absolutely shook the Eurasian MAGA faux communists to their core, U.S. presidential candidate Donald Trump has basically said he's going to unite the growing alliance between Russia and China. Now, of course, to deny that there's any kind of growing alliance between them is absolutely nonsense. And I don't really think that anybody with any grasp on reality would ignore that in any way, shape, or form. But it's interesting to note how he's supposed to be the anti-imperialist candidate. That's what the so-called MAGA communists are telling us. We're supposed to support Trump, but then also vote for this other guy at the same time. And how Trump is the anti-imperialist candidate. He will stop the wars. Where now basically he's saying he's going to undermine the so-called anti-imperialist bloc in Russia and China, which are both imperialist powers themselves. Interesting. So, in a group of people in Glendale, Arizona, he was talking and he said that we are a failing nation. We are in very serious decline. Well, that part is true. Well, the U.S. as an empire is in a very serious decline. That much is true. U.S. hegemonic power, both militarily, politically, and economically, are being challenged right across the board in just about every sphere that there possibly is. And Saudi Arabia is basically on the verge of leaving the United States completely. And then all of the evil that Saudi Arabia has done, or the Saudi government anyway, will now the U.S. will now start all of a sudden having a problem with it, and that all of that, what Saudi Arabia does, will be completely excused by China and Russia. And China and Russia seemingly just won't really have a problem with what they do anymore. Not that they've ever been very loud against it to begin with. So we do see that kind of shift, that people, particularly in the Middle East and Africa, are moving away from alliances with the United States towards the BRICS countries, because at least they're not getting bombed and murdered. But but you see that, and you see that mentality of imperialist mentality is still with Trump. And he goes on to say, look at what these stupid people have done. They've allowed Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, and others to get together in a group. Well, I mean, I hate to break it to you, Mr. Ex-President, but you never had the right to say who could or who couldn't to begin with. But you see that mentality, that imperialist mentality, is still with him, despite the fact that he's supposedly an anti-imperialist candidate. The automatic assumption that they have the right to tell anyone else who they're allowed to have relations with, who they're allowed to have alliances with, who they're allowed to trade with, who they're basically allowed to even be friends with at this point. It's right there. Every bit of the arrogance and self-assumed superiority and self-assumed authority is all right there with Donald Trump, as if he were exactly any other presidential candidate, except ununite. I don't think that's actually a word. I guess the difference would probably be there. And he goes on to say, we united them because of the oil. Biden united them. It's a shame. I'm going to have to ununite them, and I think I can do that too. Okay, if you think that this started, that the alliance between Russia and China actually started with Biden's presidency, that's complete nonsense. This started long before that, long before he was president the first time. This has been growing since probably about the 2010s. Maybe even before that. Probably most significantly during the 2010s. So this has been coming for a long time. So Trump is showing that he really doesn't know what he's talking about in this situation. He's just using this as a way of trying to cut down Biden and by proxy cut down Kamala Harris, which is who he's facing in the election in a few days. And he says, we're losing the dollar as the standard because of these people. We're losing the dollar as a standard. That's like losing a war. And to a degree, yeah. That is true. It is tantamount to losing a war. US dollar hegemony, the hegemonic position that the US dollar has had in the entire world over the past, many decades, has been a large part of the power the United States has wielded over the entire world. When you control the method or the form at which trade is conducted, that being the US dollar, your power over that currency, because it's their currency, can then turn around and completely warp, distort, or specifically punish anyone who doesn't fall behind what it is the US says the way things should go. And that is completely in their favor and undermine everybody else. I mean, you only have to look at things like the Bretton Woods Agreement that were completely designed for the US to maintain an imperial hegemonic power. But somehow we're supposed to say to save America and keep it going, when it is the problem to begin with. The very foundation of America is an empire. The very core of it is an empire, an imperialist empire. But, we're supposed to try to save it by voting Trump somehow. There's no real explanation about how that's actually supposed to work, but regardless. So it is true. There is a war over the US dollar right now. And as it is right now, that control that the US dollar still wields certainly hinders other countries to a significant degree, particularly Venezuela and Cuba, because they don't have the economic, political, or military power to actually really challenge the hegemonic position that the US has right now. Now, because other places like Russia and China, some of the 65% of their trade is with each other. So they're already controlling that trade to begin with. But about 90% of Russia's trade transaction with its larger partner, China, are conducted in their own national currencies, meaning the US dollar has nothing to do with it. So not only is the actual supply and demand being controlled by the United States, but the ability to trade itself is not being controlled by the United States. And that is significant between the two of them. Now, this trading in their own currencies is really pretty much just between them and some countries on the periphery of the BRICS nations. Basically, the US dollar still has a hegemonic position in the entire world, but at least between these two, it is challenged to that degree. And that challenge is continuing to grow almost on a daily basis. So far from this nonsense idea that somehow Trump is an anti-imperialist candidate, very clearly we see that he is still in favor of the US empire. I mean, I shouldn't have to tell you why in Marxist theory there is no such thing as peaceful transition to socialism. It literally does not happen. The system doesn't just give up one day and say, okay, you win. It's not like the end of the third Zeitgeist movie where everybody just picks up their money and throws it at the bankers, and the bankers pick up a phone and say, oh, well, guys, it's all over. We better quit now. That is so utterly utopian. It's beyond nonsense. The Trump is not this anti-imperialist candidate that's going to you just vote for him and all of a sudden imperialism is going to go away. I mean, that's so ridiculous. Anybody who would call themselves a communist to any degree knows that peaceful change is not possible. So anybody who's advocating for peaceful change or believes that peaceful change can happen is literally not a communist at all. I mean, they can come up with any kind of excuse, any justification in their mind to push that kind of position, but we know that's not what it is. We know that's not how the system actually works. Calling Trump an anti-imperialist candidate is nonsense, especially considering that he's going to be supporting Israel's genocide against Gaza. It's genocide against the Palestinian people. To sit there with a straight face and claim that the murder of the Palestinian people is anti-imperialism shows how completely detached from reality these so-called anti-imperialists are, and that they should admit really what they are. They're just closeted fascists. They're really just homophobes. And that's really what this is about. It's about undermining the woke liberal conspiracy to whatever in each individual's mind the woke conspiracy is about, because it changes from person to person. Just admit that that's what it really is. Just admit that you're not a communist. You're just a fascist, just trying to use a red veneer in order to try to look like you're, well, not a Nazi. So to say that Trump is the anti-imperialist candidate is nothing short of an absolute lie. And you know that's a lie. Yeah.
Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.